Hello and welcome to Anxiety Slayer. I'm your host, Shann, and this episode is brought to you by the Anxiety Slayer Academy. Visit anxietyslayer.com to download our free Anxiety Slayer starter course. Today I have the pleasure of introducing you to Marc Lesser. Marc is a CEO and Zen teacher who leads mindfulness and emotional intelligence programs at many of the world's leading businesses. He also offers trainings and talks worldwide. Hello, Marc. Welcome to Anxiety Slayer.
Hello, Shann. It's really a pleasure to be here with you.
Yeah, it's wonderful to have you here today. Let's begin our conversation by talking about the origin and inspiration for writing 7 Practices of a Mindful Leader. I'm also very intrigued by your tagline, Lessons from Google in the Zen Monastery Kitchen.
Yeah, well, that's been my life. Much of my life has been integrating what looks like those two different worlds, the mindfulness and contemplative practices world and the world of corporations, and especially Google. Very briefly, I took a 1-year leave of absence from university. I was on the East Coast in Rutgers and went to the West Coast, and that 1 year turned into 10 years living at the San Francisco Zen Center. As you might imagine, my parents not too thrilled about that. As a parent, I get it now in a way I didn't at the time.
Yeah, right.
Those were really kind of formative and life-changing years for me, both in the realm of my own sense of myself and having kind of developing and implementing a very deep daily meditation practice and living in community. Things that really surprised me were the world of work and the world of leadership. And for some reason, during those years, I kept getting asked to take on leadership roles and more responsibility from running a Zen Monastery Kitchen, which is where the subtitle of my book comes from. And my 10th year at the Zen Center, I was the director of a monastery that also turns into a resort and conference center, a place called Tassajara in the mountains in Central California. In those two roles, running the kitchen and being director, I had this strong sense of that suddenly I was a leader, and I was being asked to take on these roles of leading a kitchen and then leading this monastery and conference center. And it really grabbed me how these practices of attention training and mindfulness and studying the self and going beyond the self, they made so much sense to me in terms of leadership and in terms of work. And I wondered, why isn't everybody doing this? And it set me off on a path, and I went to business school. I started a publishing company that I ran for 15 years, and shortly after that, I found myself inside of Google developing a mindfulness and emotional intelligence program. So that's kind of, in a nutshell, how that happened.
Well, it's really a fascinating journey for sure. And as I was reading and listening to you so often, and even from my own experience in corporate America, which ended in 2006, I remember thinking, why aren't more of our leaders doing this work? Why aren't they understanding how important it is to to daily life and functioning and stress levels and all that comes with being a leader? Imagine how much more fruitful you can be when you're taking that time to be mindful and to be still and to not always be driving for the bottom line and all of the things that come with that.
It's funny. I think it's been happening for the past 30 or so years, but it's been hidden.
Yes.
There's been the perception that you can't. It's been even labeled. It's the woo-woo world. There's the woo. It's like new age or woo-woo, and it reminds me. A story I tell is when we were trying to see if we could bring this work of mindfulness and emotional intelligence into a major corporation, SAP, which is a German-based company. They're actually based in Germany. They have 100,000 plus employees, very conservative. And we started approaching a variety of leaders from SAP, and every one of them said the same thing. I'm ready for this kind of work, but the company is not ready. And we went to, one person after another said the same thing. We realized is that they were ready, but they all had the perception that other people and that the company wasn't ready. And I still find that today, that's a really, really common response that we get about this work. There's still that issue.
Yeah, I bet. Thank goodness you're doing it. And, one business at a time, one person at a time.
Yeah. It's interesting. What we found is that in order to bring this work into a company, there needs to be what we call a strong internal champion. One person, like that's what happened in this 100,000 person company of SAP. There was one engineer who was really determined to bring this work in. And now there have been, I think, more than 7,000 or 8,000 people in this company have taken mindfulness and emotional intelligence training. And there's a waiting list of another 4,000 or 5,000 people who want to take it.
Oh, that's fantastic. Let's talk about how your book can support our listeners who struggle with anxiety and many who are in the professional world and are leaders. And even though we don't talk about business much at Anxiety Slayer, I thought this was a perfect opportunity to open that door, because just because you struggle with anxiety or post-traumatic stress or, name the label, right, doesn't mean that you can't be functioning in the world as a highly functioning leader. It's just there's going to be some other things that come up that need to be addressed and worked through in the best way possible.
Yeah, in fact, it's probably one of the most, common experiences in our world is that for the most part, people work, we all work, and even if for some reason people have, I've noticed that a lot of some of my friends are starting to retire, and that's its own job, it's its own work. So we all work, and we all experience anxiety, and and I think especially the world of work and startups and leadership, it's part of daily life. And I've been in the startup world. I've started 4 different companies now, and I know you've probably started more than that, Shann.
Mm-hmm.
And I've found that these practices, I don't know that I could have done it without having these practices. Now, I'm not saying that everyone needs to. You don't need to go to a monastery, but I think there's something really useful about having some foundational meditation practice, mindfulness practice as an incredibly useful support to the world of work in general, no matter what. It is stressful. We take it for granted, that the combination, I think it's a really interesting combination, and there's just natural tendency between getting stuff done and taking care of people.
Right.
There's just tension there.
Oh, without question. You recommend a dedicated mindfulness practice. And for our listeners who don't have one, where can they begin? What would be the simplest first step?
Yeah, the first step is, like in most things, is just to start. And I often recommend 2 things. One, starting with something that is very doable. That might mean sitting quietly by yourself for a minute every morning. Just taking a minute. Everyone can find a minute or 3 minutes to have just a little bit of time where all you're doing is noticing your breath, noticing your body, touching into your feelings, touching into your heart, just quickly, without needing to accomplish anything, without any agenda, just having that kind of sacred space, nothing lacking. And then little by little building up. And also, I more and more, I've come out to say that meditation practice was never meant to be an individual sport. it's a group sport. And these days there are groups everywhere, even in small towns. So if possible, I recommend find a group of people to sit with once a week or once a month. If that's impossible, then find someone virtually. Or join. There's actually some interesting apps now that you can sit with other people. But there's something I think that really helpful and profound about both starting small and sit with others. That's my recommendation.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you. Before we started our conversation today, you mentioned that you might want to share a story about the Dalai Lama and anxiety.
Yeah, I think what I like about this story is that people think of the Dalai Lama or spiritual teachers as being beyond these kind of worldly difficult feelings, but not at all. It just comes with being a human being. Just briefly, the story was the Dalai Lama was sitting on his chair in front of an audience of about 3,000 people, getting ready to give a talk. And before he starts, there's several of his assistants you can see they're all kind of looking around the stage, and there's a lot of movement as though something's missing. They're trying to find something, and no one quite knows what's happening. But this is kind of going on for some time. And after several minutes, one of his assistants hands the Dalai Lama something, and it happens to be his glasses. and he very slowly pulls his glasses, out of his case, opens them up and holds them in front of the audience and says, "Anxiety." And that he was feeling anxious because he needed his glasses in order to read the papers that he had in front of him. So I thought this was such a beautiful teaching that the Dalai Lama is feeling anxiety and was in no way ashamed, or there was no sense of wanting to hide it. In fact, he was able to use it as a teaching.
Right.
So I thought that was a beautiful thing. And I would say that's this is maybe the most obvious and simple practice that I find I do a lot in my own life, is just labeling when I'm feeling anxious, just to say anxiety. And I sometimes picture the Dalai Lama when I do that.
That is so awesome. I love that so much. Really, and think about how supportive it is just to picture the Dalai Lama anyway.
Picturing the Dalai Lama is actually a great practice, which I sometimes will do, especially when I'm most anxious, right? When I'm about to give a talk or get up in front, I will kind of picture the kind of Dalai Lama's energy, including the energy of anxiety, like to not have that kind of outside, to not sort of push it away, but to say, here's what's happening right now. I'm a human being. This is part of what it is to be human. And in fact, it's one of the things that I find myself training people now to give talks and to be in leadership roles. And I'm often instructing people that to use that energy of being nervous, being anxious, feeling a sense of stress, that this can be transformed into very kind of positive energy, even though no one wants to feel it, right? We all, who wants to feel that? I don't. No one does. But I think it's interesting, the attitude about it is so crucial.
It really is. Years ago, I worked with a speaking coach. I used to do a lot more public speaking than I do now. And she was always talking to us about turning that anxiety into excitement and trying to, while we understand that there's going to be a part of us that feels that anxiety, of course, but to remind yourself how exciting it is that you get to share this message, whatever it is, that you get to share this expertise, that you've taken this time to put something together, to be of service, and to remember it, turn it about that way. And I thought that's a great way to think about it.
Totally. And then I somehow imagine you're familiar with, there's a study that was done a few years ago about there were three groups, right? There's the group that had high stress and a group that had very little stress in their life. And the measurements were about how people related. There were the people who thought that stress was a bad thing and tried to push it away, and those that had the attitude that you were describing, which is kind of a, hey, this is bring it on. And this was one of those longitudinal studies, and it turned out that people who have high stress but have a bring it on attitude actually live longer than people who either the groups that try to kind of push stress away, and even live longer than the low stress groups, which I thought was really, really interesting.
I wonder why that is.
Well, I think just what you're saying is that it actually in a way makes us stronger.
That's true.
If it makes us stronger if we, for the most part, there's no avoiding it. There's no avoiding stress and anxiety. And then the question is, can we lean into it the way that you're expressing? And then, and sometimes we can't. And then it's like not beating ourselves up for when we
Right.
just can't. That's the other part of it, I think, which is easier said than done. I get it.
It just made me think of watching Brene Brown just came out with a Netflix special. And the way that she started it out just was such a human connection, one of the things I love about her is just the way she relates as a person to you, and how she just said, she's an introvert and she wasn't really sure if she was going to come out on the stage 5 minutes before or not, just, and really that energy. And then that knowing that she is going to push through it, and she is going to show up, and she's just going to be herself unapologetically.
Yeah.
And the more she shows up, the more we show up, the more you teach and show up, the easier it is. It doesn't mean that we're not going to have those butterflies or have that discomfort. Even for some of our listeners who lead weekly meetings sometimes are struggling with anxiety and wanting to do the right thing, and
Totally.
wanting their bosses to be happy with what they're doing and not wanting to make a mistake and all of that stuff. The expectations we sometimes have versus showing up, preparing, and showing up.
Yeah. Well, this is the beautiful thing, I think, about, as you kind of started this conversation, about the opportunities for bringing this kind of work, for bringing mindfulness into the workplace.
Yeah.
Because there's so many opportunities, like in a meeting, and then to be able to create safe. How do you create safe, supportive places? To see that work. There's a whole spectrum of the spectrum in work is on one side. In fact, I'm fond of saying that at work, if you're not building trust, you are building cynicism. That cynicism is the default place in the workplace. And this is just
true.
Because most people are, so many leaders are not aligned in their own bodies and minds. So they say one thing about what their intention is, but anybody looking at them knows that they don't mean it. They're just saying it. There's a kind of using of people, as opposed to really, in an aligned, heartfelt, caring way, to actually be able to care, be able to be intimate with other people, and to be able to see people outside of their roles, and to see that they're human beings. Now, this is where there's tension in the workplace, because you also are in a role, and you're in a role and you're not in a role. And it takes some real, this is why I think mindfulness practice is so potent in the workplace, because this practice that I was describing earlier about, whether it's 1 minute or 3 minutes of just for yourself, creating a sense of safety, a sense where there's nothing lacking. And also, in a way, meditation practice, I think, is kind of cultivating with every breath what I think of as the three basic human needs, right? The need for safety, satisfaction, and connection.
Mm-hmm.
And then bringing that into a meeting in the workplace, so that when when you ask people to introduce themselves or ask people to report on what's happening in their particular workplace area, imagine being able to at least aspire to speak from that place of being safe,
Yeah.
being satisfied, and being connected.
Oh my gosh, that's just like a flashback to boardroom meetings many, many moons ago, and being in an environment where often uh, there was one unlucky manager that would be picked on for whatever came out of their mouth, with all of the sharks circling.
Yeah.
And I just remember thinking at that time, I really could have cared less, because I was just going to speak the truth as how I saw the truth, and let the chips fall where they may. And I didn't really get picked on very often. I think because I just, for whatever reason, just didn't go there. But I would watch and just be like, oh my goodness, what's going to happen next? And there was just so much insecurity, and there was so much posturing, and there was just finally my own mindfulness training and yoga training, and I had to leave that place. I had to, but
Yeah.
but there's just so many layers of things going on, and so to know that there are people like you that are going in, and that there are companies who want to change and who have been changing and evolving, and even this company that I'm referring to has changed and evolved a great deal since then. It's just fantastic.
Yeah. Yeah.
In chapter 4 of the book, you talk about the importance of connecting to our pain. And I guess I'd like to know a little bit more about how this connection can help our leaders quell anxiety for themselves and in the workplace.
I think it's part of, what I was talking about earlier, this sense of cultivating the sense of safety, satisfaction, and connection, that maybe the connecting thread of all of that in a certain way is to not push away pain, to not push away what's difficult. And this whole realm of pain can talk about on many levels, right? There's
Sure.
there's the day-to-day, of things going not the way we want them to. We don't get what we want, and we get what we don't want. This is just part of the human experience. But then a little bit deeper than that, there's the pain of our feelings, and feeling like things aren't quite right or not belonging. And then beneath that, there's knowing that we have to deal with change, and that we are getting, every breath we're getting older, and that if we're lucky, we'll get to deal with old age and sickness. And then there's death, the knowing that we will lose everything and everyone. And so that's just part of the human condition. And to be able to find a sense of freedom, and even a sense of working with a sense of urgency, like using pain as a transformative tool. And again, it's not always pretty, and it's not always going to be that way. But to have that aspiration, and to have that practice. And
Sure.
I talk about in the book I happen to have a couple of dinners with Bill George, who is an author and coaches a lot of Fortune 500 CEOs. And I was surprised when he mentioned to me that the key breakthroughs that leaders need to have is to really feel their own pain, to feel it, and to feel it deeply. That as long as you're kind of pushing it away, I think it's hard. It makes it hard to feel your deep sense of the common humanity that you have with people. And also I really love this word, concept of alignment, that how we as a leader, and again, when I use the word leader, we're all leaders. Leaders basically means influence.
Sure.
And working toward this sense of being aligned in our bodies and minds and feelings. And I think in order to do that, we need to access the pain of being human. And it's interesting how in the Buddhist teaching, from 2,500 years ago, the very first teaching that the historical Buddha gave, the first noble truth is that there's no avoiding pain. There's
Right.
no avoiding suffering. And it's interesting, the word that's translated as suffering or pain, which is the word dukkha, literally means like a wheel that's slightly out of alignment, a wheel that isn't completely round.
Yeah.
And I love that image because that's how we all, I feel that. I think we all feel that way. That's
Sure.
a kind of an image that is useful. And then the other teachings are that there is a cause to this pain, and that and the beautiful teaching of Buddhist practice is, the third noble truth is that we can find our own freedom right in the midst of pain and difficulty, and that it's
Yes.
through entering and transforming pain that's where our satisfaction and freedom lies.
I had a moment recently where I felt that for a moment, and it was such a gift because I was really uh, struggling with. My father passed away at the end of 2015, and it was my first parent to pass on, and so I didn't really know what this grieving thing was,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and how I was going to handle it, and I stepped forward and did the things that you do to be responsible, to take care of business, right? Because he would have really enjoyed that, and
Mm-hmm.
he was so organized, Mark. He was so, like, he left everything so neat and orderly and ready, uh, so that there wouldn't be any horsing around for me. Like, it was just amazing, frankly, how much he had thought about leaving things as cleanly as he could. But anyway, here came that very first eye-opening, this isn't going to last forever.
Mm-hmm.
This this what how will I use my time now? Because until now, I just really hadn't given it much thought.
Mm-hmm.
And that might sound naive, that might
Mm-hmm.
sound, it's okay, it can sound however it sounds, but from that moment, everything, there is so much more reverence every day now for the choices that I'm making and the way that I'm relating and showing up, because I finally get it and have that moment of, okay, this feeling is absolutely where it needs to be, but now what? And how can you use this to show up in a more loving way, in a more meaningful way, to be more present, to take time with the people that you love and really be there, not doing four other things and being there. But
Mm-hmm.
anyway,
Yeah.
I could
No.
ramble, but I did. I had this moment. I had this moment of, oh, for this moment that made sense to me. There was this lovely flash.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so I was very grateful for that.
Yeah. No, thank you. That's a beautiful story. And uh, as you were describing it, Shann, it also made me think about, I've done many, long retreats, or, like 7-day sittings.
Mm-hmm.
And that sense, that kind of aha moment, uh, one of the things that happens, it is, anyhow, I also wanted just to say there is something very profound about grief, and isn't it amazing, these feelings and emotions that we have that are somehow, that evolution over millions of years, this feeling of grief, and how important and powerful it is.
Yeah.
And it's similar. It's a little slight. Going back to, I was just talking about, when you sit for several days, you reach it's interesting. What happens, I think, very common is right away, uh, you start questioning, why did I do this? Like, I want to get me out of here. It's so nice out, or there's so many other things I could be doing. But little by little, there's a kind of acceptance, even though it can be painful.
Yeah.
Your knees can hurt and your back can hurt and you're like lonely. But at some point you start to get sick of yourself.
Yeah.
All of the noise and that sense of, you start to see the gap between what your situation actually is and the way that you want it to be.
Yeah.
And how much that causes pain and anxiety, and that feeling of when you can let go of that gap, it's just knees hurting, it's just back hurting, and it's like, oh, I feel this actually feels pretty good. I'm pretty happy with this right now, as long as I'm not kind of wanting it to be different or pushing it away.
Right. In the last chapter of 7 Practices of a Mindful Leader, you talk about keep making it simpler. How does simplification bring about mindfulness?
Yeah, I think, well, first recognizing, right, it's the 7th practice, and maybe the hardest, especially today, that there's such a movement toward complexity in our world. But I think in some way, meditation practice, mindfulness meditation practice, in a way, it's the practice of simplicity. It's the practice of cultivating this ability to just be alive, to just appreciate the breath and body and feelings and heart, just without needing to do anything, without cultivating what is it like to not do anything extra? What is it like to just be alive? And it was a little bit like, I felt like you were just saying that that experience you had. There's something profound about that kind of dropping in simplicity, to not be, the image. In fact, I'm reminded of one day when in one of my startups, someone came to me and was kind of complaining. They said, we have a lot of balls in the air here, and they were kind of freaking out about how many different things we were trying to do. And in that moment, I looked at him and said, let's change the image. Instead of having a lot of balls in the air that were, that image is really stressful. I said, why don't we change the image to, we're planting a lot of seeds right now.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, just shifting the image there's something
grounding,
simple
for sure.
and grounding. Planting seeds.
Yeah.
We're doing that. We're doing that one at a time, and we're watering the seeds, and we're watching and nurturing and seeing which grows. It's so different than running around trying to juggle all these balls and getting freaked out when one hits the ground. And yet, so I think in some way there's something important and profound about even the aspiration, even these days, even the aspiration to cultivate simplicity. Mm-hmm. Simplicity has a bad rap. It's a little bit like, we live in a culture where the religion is busyness. The religion is that we brag about all the balls we have in the air.
Oh man, I'll tell you, I remember that. And I'm so incredibly grateful to not be there anymore.
Mm-hmm. Uh-huh. Right.
Oh, to be able to just focus on one thing.
And it's hard. I was slightly embarrassed, Shann, when you first came on and you asked me about my new book, and I immediately thought, oh, how does she know I'm writing another book?
I love that.
Actually, I'm kind of I'm sort of excited. I'm writing I did, in some way, it's actually a grounding practice. I like having a book project.
Sure.
I like having something that I'm unpacking and uncovering, and it's always, of course, starts with what I most need, what I most need to learn. And I'm writing a book about power right now, which is well, you can do that interview. Probably, who knows? It might be 2 years. It might be
All right.
5 or 10 years. Sometimes, I'm surprised often at the gestation period for me of books.
Yeah.
I'm trying to speed it up this time, but we'll see what happens.
Oh, good for you. Well, I've enjoyed our conversation so much today, Mark. Thank you for coming on Anxiety Slayer. Thank you for writing this fantastic book. Where can our listeners get in touch with you and order a copy of 7 Practices of a Mindful Leader?
Well, they can get in touch with me, Marc Lesser, and that's MarcLesser.net. And you can, from there, you can read about the book. And you can get the book anywhere that, books are sold. I love supporting our local booksellers.
Yes.
Hopefully they have it. It's hit or miss, but it's worth trying.
Sure.
And they can order it, and any place. The book is widely available. 7 Practices of a Mindful Leader.
Fantastic. And is there anything, any thought, anything bubbling up that you'd like to leave us with today before we carry on?
Oh, sure. I've been carrying with me this piece. It's a beautiful few lines from a poem. The poem is called "The Word" by the poet Tony Hoagland. And let's see if it's in me right now. Let's see if I can pull it up. It says, "Do you remember that time and light are kinds of love? And love is as practical as a coffee grinder and a safe spare tire." I love that. Do you remember that time and light are kinds of love? I think it's
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it's just a beautiful couple lines, and the whole poem is quite beautiful.
Oh, I'll be sure to look it up. Well, Mark, thank you so much. Such a pleasure to share some time with you today. Thanks again.
Thank you, Shann. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening to Anxiety Slayer. This episode is brought to you by the Anxiety Slayer First Responder Series, a supportive health anxiety course to help you feel better, because worrying about your health can rob you of precious time and peace of mind. Learn more at anxietyslayer.com.